Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto and welcome to this new trading education video. I can also call it crypto education. It's kind of both. It's not really only applicable to trading. I think it's in general very valuable to know this if you're investing crypto, if you're active in crypto, if you accumulate it, because what I wanted to talk about in this video, and hopefully that already became a bit clear with the thumbnail and the title, is I wanted to talk about crypto crashes. All right. Now, normally in the markets we don't see crypto crashes that often, but the market circumstances right now, this weekend, have been relatively weak. I would not call it a crash, all right? Some people are calling this a crash, and some altcoins are crashing, so be aware of that. But I would not call this a normal crash. When we're talking about a crash, what I think is a crash more is something like this, all right? Something like we had the 5th of August, or something that we had, for example, right here during all the German Bitcoin selling. But for now, I would not call this a crash yet, even though, I mean, on the 12-hour time frame, Bitcoin at least has dropped down a total of 7% already, which is quite a lot for the asset sides that Bitcoin has. However, we'll talk about some general rules and some general tricks in which you can actually find out, is this actually a real crash, or are we just testing lows? Is this just some sort of a bear trap, whatever? And that's extremely valuable. I mean, if you go back to, for example, last week with the DeepSeek crash, I would call this a crash earlier than the price action we see right now. But if you use the tips and tricks, I'll tell you, it's 4 of them. In this video, you could have actually known that this move would retrace back up. And we personally, in the Signal group, but me personally as well, we actually made money off that. We analyzed the move, we justified, or we talked about, is this a real crash, yes or no? We came up with the answer no, and that's why we bought. And as you can see, it actually turned out not to be a crash, even though the week afterwards we did crash. So let's get right into it. Like I said, it's 4 kind of criteria, 4 kind of tips you have to look at to find out, is this a real crash or not. The first one is, are high time frame significant key levels broken? So in the case of a crash, that would be support levels. All right, it can only be a crash. A crash usually is sustained bearish momentum if we actually break through a high time frame support level. And at this point of time, I think it's too early to say that. I mean, there's different ways to actually find out whether that's going on or not. And I would say, I mean, if you take a look at Bitcoin right now, like the first strong support level we have is kind of this level right here, around 101,000. I mean, you can see it's been respected quite often. It's both as resistance but also as support. And what you can see is that, yes, the daily time frame candle is actually trading below that level. However, we have not broken below that yet. The candle has not closed below that yet. And you can see that you could even argue that there's another strong support level holding up right here, and you could come to the conclusion that as long as this holds, we're fine. I personally don't have that conclusion. This is a bit subjective, right? Because you have to find the key levels yourself. In my opinion, I mean, if we actually do a breakdown below 101,000 with the next daily time frame candle, I would say this criteria is fulfilled. All right, but it's crucial. I mean, if a crash is real, it will actually have a real sustained breakdown in this case below a support level. So as long as that has not happened, as long as that has not been completed, the candle hasn't been closed on a higher time frame, in my opinion, it's not a real crash. Even though this is, I mean, it's like the second point I wanted to talk about is kind of, is there a fundamental reason that we are crashing? Because honestly, I mean, if there's a real fundamental reason why we are crashing, you always have to ask yourself that, right? Well, is there a reason? And then second of all, for example, last week with DeepSeek, is it a good reason? Like last week, there was a reason, but in the end, it wasn't a good reason, and it was more kind of fair because of that bad reasoning that made the price drop down. And honestly, I mean, if you, for example, go back to April, we actually crashed quite a bit because of Israel-Iran tensions. Then you will not get a breakdown below a certain support level on the higher time frames, because the price will fall too quickly. All right, so what's even more important to kind of talk about, is this a real crash or not, is the fundamentals. And in this case, I mean, like I said last week, the fundamentals I think were not correct. If you go back to the 5th of August right here, I think the fundamentals were also not correct. There were recession fears. We never got that recession. So now the big question is well, all right, well, we have some fear about the tariffs. Is that fundamental reason correct? And I think that's a story that's still to be continued. But that is something you have to think about yourself as well. If you think this whole story is overblown and the tariffs do not matter too much, then honestly, you might come to the conclusion that this is, so far, not a real crash. Because we have not gotten that significant breakdown below a significant high time frame support level, and the fundamental reasoning, in your opinion, because this is subjective, you have to do your own research, you have to form your own opinion on this, and the fundamental reasoning is not correct if you think so. All right, I personally think, and this also comes into play with the third reason or the third kind of criteria. I personally think we still have to see that, because the third thing you have to analyze in order to analyze whether it's a real crash instead of some sort of a bear trap is the fundamentals. And unfortunately, at this point of time, I don't have access to the fundamentals yet. The markets are closed. But if the fundamentals are actually very bearish, right? So if the S&P 500 is falling down a lot, if the dollar strength index is very, very bullish, those are reasons fundamentally why a crash would occur. If that's not the case, like if the dollar strength index, for example, again, last week, the dollar strength index actually was still very bearish, which is good for Bitcoin. So that was another reason why I said, I actually think this is not a real crash. So if, for example, if the dollar strength index opens very bullish and the stock markets crash down, which is to be expected, that's a reason why the current price action would be a real breakdown or a real crash. And then the last reason is volume. All right. So basically, the more volume there is in a move down, the higher the possibility or the higher the probability that it's a real breakdown and a real continued crash. At this point of time, I would actually say that the volume is relatively low. All right. The volume is around $41 billion for the weekend. It's quite high. But outside of that, I mean, if you compare it to a normal week, it's quite low. So like I said, especially talking about the crash right now, I still have to see how the fundamentals are and how the reaction of the markets, the kind of macro financial markets are to the tariff news. But if that reaction is not too bad, like if the dollar strength index is still bearish and stock markets find support, I think we still have a chance here to actually call this a fake bearish move, a fake crash, a fake breakdown, and that we will be able to reclaim support. I will keep you updated on in the daily updates, but those kind of to sum them up, the 4 criteria, the 4 tips I can give you to actually judge a breakdown, whether it's a real breakdown, a real crash, or some sort of a bear trap, is fundamentals. Is there a fundamental reason? Confirmation technically. So do we actually technically have some sort of a confirmation of a bearish breakout? Volume. Is the volume high? Is the volume low? Is the volume medium? And then second of all, how do other fundamental kind of macroeconomic numbers look compared to the Bitcoin price action? That sort of thing you need to know. Hopefully it's valuable to you. It's at least been incredibly valuable for me in my trading. So yeah, if you do have any questions, of course, let me know down in the comments. For now, thank you for watching. Take care and bye.